ever worried that you might be the cool kid? You wear the latest fashions on top of all the trends. Or have you ever worried you were too much in the mainstream, always so generic, more normal than your friends? Well, we've devised a test to put to rest your fears. There's no need to panic if you lend us your ears. Tonight you can't sleep easy after all that you've heard, 'cause if you like the show, then you're probably a nerd. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all. Tyler, Kyle, and Boris. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all in Canon.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the It's Canon podcast. It's a new week, it's a new day, it's a new set of frustrations, I'm sure, for not just my co-host, but many people out there. But that's all of the negativity that we're going to talk about, well, at least until Tyler speaks. But anyways, welcome to another episode of the It's Canon podcast, where we talk all things geek. I am one of your hosts. I am Boris, and as always, I am joined by Tyler.
The witch's curse has returned.
I know. It's been it's interesting to say the least. Just so that our listeners know, it took us a lot of anger and frustration to get connected so that we can record tonight's episode. But alas, we are here, we are recording, and we just wanted to get an episode out there because it has been over a week. We will do better. My sickness is just wouldn't go away. But I am feeling a lot better now, and I'm ready to get back to it. And I think that in the grand scheme of things, it worked out that we waited, because today is a very significant day for anyone who's followed movies the past 11 years or so, probably longer, especially for those people clamoring for titles such as X-Men and Fantastic Four to possibly maybe one day be into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah. That's a thing.
That's a thing, and it's probably the biggest news that's come out over the past couple days.
I mean, let's slow down a smidge. Slow down just a smidge.
All right.
Just an incy smidge.
Just an incy.
Well, I concur that it has happened. It's worth us mentioning and being aware of the fact that a lot of people have suggested that this may actually fall afoul of antitrust law. So it is possible this could be undone under a future administration.
Oh, more than likely.
And a lot of people have said it would be undone under a future administration because the purpose of antitrust law is basically to make sure that, that competition still exists, that capitalism functions, and you don't get oligarchies.
Yep, to say the least.
Yeah.
To say the least. It's been a very interesting day and years, I guess, since this was announced way back when, a couple years ago, I guess, or last year. This is by far the biggest media merger ever. It's only a measly $71.3 billion purchase of Fox, 21st Century Fox's film and TV assets. I think the biggest takeaway there is the fact that, Fox Media Corp still exists. It will exist as its TV station, news station, sports stations, etc. So Rupert Murdoch still holds a majority there, but their film, TV assets all now belong to the mouse.
Yep.
By far, this is the biggest media merger, as I mentioned earlier, since MGM was taken over in the 1980s. Now we only have 5 actual movie studios in Hollywood. They consist of Disney, Warner Brothers, Sony, Universal, and Paramount. It's crazy when you think about it. And
Sony, Disney, Universal. Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
My brain merged two of those together, and I was like, I think you only said 4. Nope, you said 5.
Yep.
We're good.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, so here we are at, layoffs aside, because we know what happens when companies merge. We know how long it'll take for them to hammer out the internal processes and internal politics. I guess the next few years are going to be very interesting to see sort of where all of this goes and, what we're going to get out of it. It's more than just movies, obviously. It's owning assets. TV shows for Hulu, Disney Plus, movies for their streaming services, just rights retentions and all of that is really the goal. It's just, trying to control everything that you possibly can. It's literally, they're pulling a Thanos on us. And it's just really interesting to sort of see all of this happen. It's scary that this is happening, because we're seeing, before we lived in a world where it was the big fish eating the smaller fish, but now it's the bigger fish eating the big fish. And we're, where is this going to lead? Like, are we going to get to a point where we're going to get to 3? All right, so starting recording again.
Jesus Christ. Biggest merger in media history. Maybe you've heard of it.
I don't even know where the fuck we were. Oh my god,
I heard you were saying this. That's where we were. Biggest media merger in history. Maybe you've heard of it. Disney has bought out Fox's media movie arm.
Yep.
There's only 5 left.
Yep.
Skype then says, no, now's time for an update.
Yep.
And we continue.
Yeah, anyways, I'll make this work. I'll edit it properly. So, 3, 2, 1. So I'm not sure exactly where this is going to take us. And yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where we go from here. There's just so much going on, as I mentioned, from the actual TV shows to the movies to, just everything. It's going to be scary if we get to a point like where, these bigger fish are now just eating up, they're the competition. It's just, it's crazy. There's literally all major media now is basically owned by 3 or 4 parent companies when you take a look at this.
Yep.
Everything that we consume is being controlled by a smaller and smaller group. And I want to get into this a little more, but I think I'm going to sort of let things happen in terms of articles. I want to read a little more, and, I think that this will make for a hell of an episode. Having said that, we're kind of touching on some aspects of that in today's episode, because today's topic du jour is streaming services and sort of, where the world is going, and what are the disruptors up to, and how the movie industry has been completely disrupted and usurped.
Well, unless, unless Spielberg has his way.
Well, exactly. We'll talk about that, which is kind of hilarious when you read his arguments, considering how he started.
It's stupid.
Oh, for sure. But
like, as much as I'm an old man yelling at kids to get off my lawn, it's an old man yelling at kids to get off his lawn.
No, it literally is. It's here's someone who started off as a completely unknown, complete independent filmmaker, literally started from the bottom and worked his way up, and now he's, he advocated for so long to listen to the little guys, these are the true artists, etc., and now that he's probably one of the most influential people, it's like, well, screw everyone else. Let's, You have to play by the rules, or you can't be allowed.
I don't understand these computers. It's a series of tubes.
Yep. Yep. So we're gonna be talking about streaming services later. We're gonna talk about the Disney Fox merger and bigger scheme down the road. But what are your initial thoughts? Day one thoughts.
I mean, the policy wonk side of me thinks this is almost like a textbook violation of the antitrust rules, and I'm surprised that this merger went through and was allowed. Whether or not you think there's a moral problem to a small handful of companies controlling all of our creative output, legally we agreed to a set of rules that, if you read them, it sure looks like this might be violating it.
Yeah.
But apparently not. So anyways, I think that this is going to be appealed or sued over or something in a heartbeat.
Yeah, exactly.
From the creative side, I genuinely, with where the MCU is at right now, I don't think they gain anything from mutants.
No, they probably don't. They had the Inhumans. They tried something with the Inhumans from a movie standpoint. Who knows what happened there? They tried the TV show, and that was a flop. So, I think that they just don't know what to do with these groups, as opposed to, these singular characters.
Well, heck, let's nerd out about story for a moment. I think part of the problem is that if you look at the current MCU, these are functionally mythic figures. Like Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, all of them, they are functionally heroes with a capital H from ancient Greek myth. Like the stuff they do, the shape of the stories, they are classical heroes. And they are mythic heroes in that way.
Yep.
And that's a type of story. And let's call a spade a spade. Most of the Marvel movies in the MCU follow the logic and the math of a mythic story. And ipso facto, because of what it handles in this subject matter, X-Men aren't about a mythic group. It's about oppression, and it's about social inequalities and stuff, and I don't think you can unplug those and keep what it's about. I think it's even worse. You look at the comics right now, where they have the comics, and they are like, nah, the X-Men are doing their own thing. If you want to look at the events on right now, we have three events in the Marvel comic universe, and one of them is just the X-Men off doing their own thing. No one else is involved. It's just the X-Men doing their thing.
Yeah, but typically speaking, the X-Men have always operated that way. It's very rare that the X-Men are in the middle of a major crossover event. At least in the past few years, they've been. I'm not to say that they haven't been involved, but they haven't really been major players. Now, there are your conspiracy theorists who believe that it's because of the movie rights, and since they didn't have the movie rights, they didn't want to push their comics. But that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard, because then why produce their comics?
Why are the comics better? Why are the comics selling better?
Exactly. It goes to my theory there is because people are sick and tired of everything intertwining. People are sick and tired of every 6 months there being a major event, and from a consumer standpoint, you're buying, double, triple the amount of comic books just to follow one major event. And it gets too much. It's too much. It's hard to follow.
The model of trying to extract more and more dollars from a small group it's a patently faulty model on its face.
Yep.
I actually think the companies to look at right now, or look at what Boom is doing, look what IDW is doing. And, I mean, Image is always a tricky one because it's so creator-driven. Like, the creators can do whatever they want.
Yep.
Look at Boom and IDW right now, and, like, they move product. And IDW's Marvel license for kids comics, like, those move.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kids come in and they'll be grab them.
Exactly, and that's why, a lot of people are really beginning to latch on to, where comics should be in a few years, is that, they're kind of standalone-ish to the greater extent that they have been in recent memory. A lot of people are just kind of tired, and it's hard for creators because how much control do you have as a creator within your book? Let's say, for example, you are writing Spider-Man, but you have to know.
Right now, but okay.
Yes, okay, yeah, that is a bad example right now. But let's just say Spider-Man, and there's a major event, and your job is to set up the event, your job is to close out the event. So you're kind of being told what to write for from so many different directions while still trying to maintain your own creative integrity. So just from a creator standpoint, you're not getting the best stories. You're getting this intertwined spaghetti story with gosh knows how many twists and turns and swerves for the sake of having a swerve. And then, again, being forced to carry out someone else's story, it can get troublesome as a creator. And then as a consumer, I only want to buy Spider-Man books. I don't care about buying, Captain America books or Iron Man books or X-Men books all at the same time, just so that I can read what's going on with Spider-Man. Plus, on top of that, each issue of this event is going to have 20 covers.
Oh, Jesus. That's a whole other. No, we're dealing with that another time.
No, exactly. That's why I stopped there.
Time. ...
So going back to our original point, I for the most part agree with your assessment in terms of them literally shoehorning in, not literally, figuratively, shoehorning in these new characters into the MCU. The MCU has been built within a certain scope. That scope has now expanded, as we spoke last week, to have more mythical and godlike characters, stronger characters, but they still work within the same mythos of the MCU and the rules that they created 11 years ago. It'll be interesting to see how they shoehorn, these new characters, because these new characters, they don't, as you mentioned, they don't really stand for the same things that the MCU stands for. It'll be interesting to see just how far away from the source material they're willing to go to have those characters for the sake of just using those characters. Are they going to move away from the X-Men being, your representation of the civil rights movement in the 60s,
I don't know how you could.
You can't. That's what
the current comic run. The current comic run is 60s AF.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So it'll just be it'll be interesting. So yeah. We can we'll see what goes on with all of that. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where they go just from a pure Marvel Cinematic Universe point of view. Now, we'll talk a little about the streaming and Hulu and and Disney Plus a little later. So we'll put a pin in that discussion. Other big news that happened over the past few days, and which is funny because this is probably what we would have been talking about if we had recorded over the weekend, and it's essentially the not so shocking news that Marvel Studio reinstated James Gunn as the director of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Yeah, okay.
Does this shock you? It's funny because for going back to what we had discussed last week about the social justice warriors, it's James Gunn did said stuff in the past. He apologized for it. So should we, kind of blame him and, and not allow him to move forward with his career because he did something in the past and he was clearly sorry for it or apologized for it?
Yeah, I mean, it's Disney's prerogative to fire him.
Yep.
It's Disney's prerogative to hire him back.
Yep.
They were all okay with it. There we go. Problem solved.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. That's exactly where I was going with that. Was, Disney was forced because, especially at the time that all of this was coming out, they were kind of, they if they didn't fire him at the time, they would have gotten a lot of backlash. What that backlash means.
Let's spade a spade. Those were bad jokes. The jokes in question were not, they were both offensive jokes and not very good. And, I'm the first one who says, if you're a comedian or you're in comedy, they're not all, you're going to have those jokes coming out. And, Twitter is not the best spot for them. It's better to go over in a writer's room, which is a safe space for everyone involved, or if you're a stand-up, to do them on a set, people understand these are unfinished jokes. Right? When you have this situation where you can go through them and people understand this is an in-progress thing. And I think Twitter, part of the problem is it creates artifacts that are functionally you tweet and it's out there forever. And that's just it.
Yep. So let that be a reminder to everyone who is a creator or just a person who likes their job. Think before you tweet, because you never know who's gonna find earlier tweets.
Oh, definitely. It's treat it like you're marketing. Treat it like it's all in front of the media, because it is.
Well, that's exactly it. If you're not willing to say some of these things that people tweet and whatever to public or in a job, then chances are that's not something that you want to tweet out or post on social media or talk about on a podcast, because someone's going to find it eventually.
Cough, cough. Carlson.
Exactly. So this weekend is S3E2. We are in the middle of con season, and this weekend the con stop in Chicago for S3E2. Pretty huge weekend. Tons of guests are going down. I know some people going down that are going to have an awesome time. These conventions keep getting bigger and bigger, and it seems like the con season starts earlier and earlier every year.
Well, it's functionally second weekend of March to end of November now.
Yeah. Yep, before it used to be May to end of, mid-October. New York usually signaled the end of Comic-Con, or the con season, and S3E2 or Emerald City would start it off, later on. Earlier in the year, I should say. But they're just starting earlier, ending later, and there just seem to be more and more and more of them around, and all around the world. I see so many cons now, or creators that I have, whether it be on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, posting how they're getting ready to go to Asia or Europe or these places that typically didn't have these Comic-Cons. Now they are having them.
Had them, just we weren't part of them.
Well, exactly. They kind of had their own thing, but now they're kind of expanding to include, everyone.
Look at it from the board game side or the Italian comic side of two of the biggest cons in the world are in Europe. And I can't remember the name of it is, but there's a con in Italy that is top 5 in the world. It's 1 million attendees or something. It's something insane.
Yep, exactly. It's crazy. Have you ever looked into attending a European con? Is that something in the books for you? Is that something that makes sense for you?
I am looking. There's a client that I'm working with that is talking about flying me out to Essen this year. for Essen-Spiel.
Yep.
And if I did that, I would make a 2-week trip of it probably, and I'd hit Dragon Meat the week before.
And that one is a con primarily for, is it RPGs and gaming, or is it?
Dragon Meat is more of it's a little bit gaming focused, but getting a lot more of the comics and stuff. Whereas Essen-Spiel is just games.
Okay. All right.
Essen-Spiel is like the gaming convention.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very cool. That's very cool. And when is the potential for this happening? When do those cons take place?
Oh, geez. They're both end of the year. It's like Dragon Meat is the first weekend of December, and Essen-Spiel is late November, early December.
Right. Very cool. Very cool.
Which, again, like, that's how long the season goes, right?
Yeah, right? It's crazy.
Oh, they're way far apart this year. Oh, no. Well, my plan screwed up.
Well, there's that. But yeah, no, so any one of our listeners who are going to Chicago, have fun, have a blast, let us know how it went. And, don't get too lost.
Good luck.
Exactly, good luck. Let's see, in terms of video games, some news that came up on my one of my RS feeds that I constantly follow to keep in the loop of things was the previously Xbox exclusive Cuphead is being released for the Nintendo Switch.
When was that Xbox exclusive?
Sorry?
When was that, like, Xbox exclusive at the beginning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now it's so they are going to be coming out for the Nintendo Switch. And it'll be really cool because I haven't played this game, but I've heard some fantastic things about that. And it's coming out actually very soon. It's April 18th. So in about a month. Just under a month. That's very cool there. Do you have anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I got a couple things. I wanted to start out with... Oh, bugger. Bugger. I had it, and they are gone. I wanted to start out with the Epic. The Epic Store and their attempt to get on Steam, and how we're getting more and more games going exclusive to Epic. Combined with their claim today that the claim was that the new Metro game sold 2.5 times as much as it would on Steam. And how most reporters are immediately going, I mean, maybe? You're kind of comparing apples to grapes here.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Epic is the new store that is competing against Steam. It's not great yet, but it's been giving away free games like one every 2 weeks or something like that, which, helps get people on board.
Yeah.
And they've recently started tying up a variety of exclusives, including XCOM spiritual sequel Phoenix Point, and now Outer Rim, the spiritual sequel to Bethesda's / Black Obsidian's Fallout New Vegas, set place in a science fiction world instead, is going to be a Microsoft Store / Epic Store exclusive.
Very interesting.
So I wanted to get your thought, and then there's a bunch of rumors that how much they've been paid to do so. The current gossip on the internet is that the company behind Phoenix Point, for example, was paid $2 million to go Epic exclusive.
Wow. Very interesting. We're clearly seeing the same sorts of tactics that we are seeing in regards to streaming and all the streaming services. Is, let's get all the rights for everyone And exclusive rights, that's the key. It's having the exclusive rights. So you're going to be seeing a lot of money being thrown to creators and studios so that they can exclusively show up on a store. Now, where this will be interesting to see is what these exclusivity rights mean. Are they going?
So for Phoenix Point,
Yep.
because we have this data, it's indefinite exclusivity.
Okay.
For Outer Rim, it is a 1-year exclusivity.
Interesting. Very interesting. See, knowing that it's 1 year. See, it depends because with the way that those games are, it's not as bad. It's trivial in the sense that, okay, if I want to play something, I just need to install this store and get the store running in my computer.
Agreed. There's no monthly.
Yeah, there's not a monthly fee per se. But let's say these games, there was a game that would appear on one of these stores, whether it be Steam or Epic, and they have exclusive rights to one of these stores, but that will mean that, they can't release on a console, for example. It'll be interesting because, as a publisher of these games, are you blocking profit just for exclusivity? For that extra little money up front from someone. You're kind of guaranteeing that the possibility of success, but are you sort of sacrificing larger profits for being exclusive to one platform? And we don't know what we don't. The future hasn't, or the future has yet to tell us, what Steam and Epic have in store. What makes them very different. There's not enough data there that they'll say one, has more tracking tools than the other, or something that might make some people feel uncomfortable. We don't know. We don't know any of this yet, so, it'll be interesting to sort of see once more data comes out, but, on the basis of things, we're just seeing the same dogfight that we are seeing when it comes to streaming services and trying to capture all of the rights. I will
throw it out there.
Yeah.
That Epic Games appears to be playing very nice with Microsoft.
Right.
Also, I'm just on the Epic Store right now, and they have updated a lot since last time I was on. The entire Quantic Dream trilogy is now coming soon to computer on Epic Games.
Wow.
So that's Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, Detroit Become Human.
Wow.
Outer Worlds is up here. Ancestors, which I'm not sure by Private Division, is up here. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah, so I think it's too early to really
Journey,
tell.
Which was an Xbox exclusive. Sorry, yep.
Yeah, so, great. I think overall it's too early to tell, but it's just interesting to see the rights wars happening everywhere, as content seems to be, the biggest thing right now, just getting and owning as much content as you possibly can.
I mean, that seems to be what they think.
Do you think it's a good gamble? Do you think that this is in fact the way that these companies should be going?
Well, I mean, if we look at Epic, I think that you hit nail on the head when you pointed out the difference between it's a one-off payment versus a monthly.
Yep.
And I think that nailing down exclusivity is more important for a game like this for a company like Epic. Just because their only need is to get people into the goddamn store. Yep,
exactly.
And then they can compete. And then it's going to be genuinely, because at some point they don't have enough money to get the exclusivity, because there's got to be some sort of incentive.
Exactly.
Whether it's a guaranteed minimum sales or how it's done, there's an incentive that these publishers are getting to go exclusive on Epic. And at some point they won't have the money for that if they can't compete otherwise. And it looks like they're licensing this up, and I mean the store's still garbage. Like, I literally have to scroll up and down, and I have no. I can't choose. I'm not looking for a strategy game. I can't choose what I'm looking for. Whatever, it's just scroll up and down until I find the game I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And they're gonna fix that, but that is garbage.
Right.
And like that doesn't incentivize me.
Now, to sort of combine two news items, do you think that Google Stadia is going to play a factor in this exclusive rights world?
I mean, I think Google thinks it's going to.
Clearly. Obviously, they wouldn't. A company like Google or Alphabet, whatever you want to call them, they don't put investments into something that they don't think is going to succeed and be a disruptor in an industry. Especially.
Well, I disagree. I disagree with that statement ipso facto.
Do you think they just release things for the sake of releasing things?
No, I think they make a calculated risk.
Okay.
They look at the over-under.
Yeah.
I think that you look at Google Glass is a great example of it was either going to change everything or it was going to flop.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked at the odds, and fine, sure. Like, they made the call.
Right.
I don't think they're stupid, but I don't think that Google is internally convinced the Stadia is going to automatically win.
No. I don't think so either, but there's obviously enough research that's been done on their side to say that, hey, there's a need for this streaming-like platform, and no one else has touched this market yet, for the most part. And,
no, exactly.
You know, as Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo are focusing on, you know, their this current generation of platforms and only in development for their next generation platforms, I think they're coming in at a right time and try to disrupt the game and see pardon the pun, disrupt the game and sort of see what they can do. It will be interesting to sort of see, you know, the overall repercussions here in terms of what we were talking about with exclusivity, because when it comes to Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, and Google, which company has the most resources to literally throw, you know, money trucks at a publisher?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that to use the Stadia, you need a 25 megabit per second connection.
Yes.
Which is less than 50 million people in the United States.
Yes. Actually,
which admittedly is a large number, but like you're looking at 250 million potential customers.
Yep.
And the people you're getting live in the city where your competition for attention is higher.
Yep. Exactly. And it's great that you jumped into that, because I was going to get into some of the technical details talking about the high connection rate constant connection rate that you need. The fact that it's an on-demand over the OTT service. It's completely wireless. It's going to be all electronic, no physical gaming platform. Essentially, any TV with Chromecast computers running Chrome or Google Pixel, you know, that's your system. And now it's just, you know, what you versus the internet at that point.
Well, and like without net neutrality, oof.
Yeah, exactly. And we all know where, like, we don't know where the whole net neutrality is going. There's been it's being debated constantly in the States, and you know, you're kind of seeing that this chatter is starting to come up here in Canada in regards to net neutrality. And you never know what the CRTC has up their sleeves.
Who knows?
So, yeah, so Google, like I said, Google is I think that they're seeing an opportunity, but they're being very Google about it here. This is obviously, you know, the way that when I was reading their, you know, all the material that they sent out, and press releases and things like that, all that it kept screaming in the back of my mind was, well, Google, this will sort of now force cities and potential customers to get your internet service.
I mean, that might be what it is, right? It might be, let's use this to increase this other thing, and if it succeeds, awesome, and if not,
Yeah.
we write it off as capital.
That's exactly it. Like, that's what I mean. So that's why I say that they see that there's a gap somewhere in the industry. They're gonna throw shit at a wall and see what sticks. Google does that. Look at what they did with Google Plus. Look at what they've done with a bunch of Google products and applications. Well, they're just, they'll give it an investment. They'll see if it lasts, and if it does, cool. If it doesn't, then let's just shrug it under the rug. But no, it'll be interesting to sort of see, because now, regardless of whether this sticks or not, this is changing. This is going to eventually change the game. Again, pardon the pun, because obviously now Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft are probably going to push more towards this model of over-the-air gaming, or over-a-cord OTT gaming.
Yeah.
Xbox was rumored to go in this direction for a while.
Well, but then they even said the problem is that internet.
Exactly. As long as internet is charged the way that it's charged, let's not even begin to talk about here in Canada, but even in the States, if internet is being charged as a limited package, and not the way that we charge electricity or any actual utility, then this is always going to be an issue. But I don't see that ever changing, because this is just the way that we've done things for so long. And as much as humanity loves to change, and our buying trends change and consumption trends change, we take very long time to adapt to certain things.
Yeah, sometimes.
There's a lot of red tape around this as well, and obviously the cable companies and the telecom companies love the fact that they can charge us up the ass, and we just say, can we have some more?
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
No.
Just looking at this. So tonight is Wednesday. By the time that folks are listening to this, I'm pretty sure that the John Wick 3 trailer will be out.
Tell us how it is. Travel back in time.
Exactly. So yeah,
tell us how many dogs are in it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I'm actually really looking forward to that. But I don't know which Keanu Reeves project I'm looking forward to more, whether it be John Wick or the new Bill and Ted.
I'm not looking forward to the new Bill and Ted. I don't actually think it'll be good.
No? I think they wouldn't be making it if they didn't have the right story.
I mean, that would be wonderful. I would love to be wrong on this. However...
Yeah, history, proves you right 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
I love how CBS had to send out a press release just to tell us that the new Captain Picard-based Star Trek show will not be called Picard.
Okay.
Exactly. This is where we are in the world, Tyler. This is where we are.
Who thought this?
I don't know.
Of course it's not.
Yeah, well, I don't know. They must have picked up enough steam for them to warrant a press release to control the message. Yep. That's where we're at. So I think this is a good time to move on. I think we've kind of exhausted a few major topics for the week, and we'll talk about our hits of the week, and then we can talk about the topic du jour. But before we do that, I think we're going to take a bit of a break. But before we do that, Tyler, can you let our fine listeners know how they can get a hold of us?
Yeah, they can find us at It's Canon on the internet, on Facebook, just look up It's Canon Podcast on Twitter. Same thing. I don't know if we have an Instagram or not. Don't really care.
We do.
You can find Boris at BR_AGUILAR and Tyler at TYLER_ROY.
And you can actually find all of this information on our newly launched website.
What?
Exactly. So I put some thought into things, and I was thinking, you know what? To properly get metrics and controlling where our episodes end up and just making things easier for me to track things, you know, I just put up a small investment so that we can relaunch our website. The website can be found at www.itscanonpodcast.com, and essentially it'll just be a collection of all of our podcasts, and you'll be able to find our Patreon there. We'll talk more about the Patreon later, or not at all this episode, we'll see. But yeah, so I just wanted one place where you can find all of the information, ways to get a hold of us, and ways that you can listen to past episodes of the show. Having said that, the only episodes that we will be posting on the free feed are this season's and moving forwards. If you want to listen to archive episodes, you'll have to join the Patreon.
Yeah.
So with that said, I think it's a great time to take a break. When we do get back, we will be talking about our hits of the week, and then we're going to be talking about all things streaming services.
Yeah.
We'll be back.
Woo.
I threw a wish in the well, don't ask me, I never tell. I look to you as a tell, now you're in my way. I trade my soul for a wish, pennies and dimes for a kiss. I wasn't looking for this, but now you're in my way. Your Sarah's holding, ripped jeans, skin was showing, hot at night, wind was blowing. Where you think you're going, baby? Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe. It's hard to look right, I do, baby, but here's my number, so call me maybe. You took your time with the call, I took no time with the fall. You gave me nothing
And we're back.
my way. I
Ooh.
beg and borrow.
All right, so
All I have for sight.
you know, this is gonna be a good little conversation. You know, with so much happening in the past few years in regards to rights and TV shows and streaming companies, and it seems like everyone under the sun now will or is planning to have a streaming company or a streaming service. I think we should take a look at streaming services and sort of get an in-depth talk about sort of, you know, where they started, where they're going, and where we think they're going to end up. So, you know, we've done some research. So I think, you know, the simplest place to start really is you know, with Netflix, and then we'll move on from there.
All right.
Having said that, before we go there, we should probably give our listeners our hits of the week, our picks of the week, our choices of the week, our, I don't know what, however else we can possibly say this. So I will go first, and again, because I have been trying to catch up on a lot of TV, you know, my hit of the week is Doom Patrol on DC streaming service in the US of A.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar tone-wise to a certain extent to Titans, but it's so different in other senses. It's a really well done show. It's funny at times, like it's just laugh out loud funny sometimes. The character growth and, you know, their development has been fantastic over the first, you know, 4 or 5 episodes that it's been on. You know, it's characters that overall I haven't followed too much. Doom Patrol and this incarnation of Doom Patrol I haven't really followed too much. I don't know too much about them, so really I'm learning about the characters through the TV show, which is a rarity for me. I'm really liking it. And honestly, Timothy Dalton as, one of the main characters, you can horribly go wrong, but with Doom Patrol, you are not going wrong. So for those of you in the US of A, sign up for the DC streaming service. You'll get Titans, you'll get Doom Patrol, you'll get Young Justice Season 3, you'll get some other cool stuff. And for those of you in Canada, Doom Patrol will begin airing on Space Channel in April. So there you go. My pick of the week, Doom Patrol TV show.
What? My pick of the week is actually a comic. It is Little Bird by director/screenwriter Darcy Van Poelgeest. It is super Canadian. Darcy, I believe, lives out in BC. There's a character who looks like a giant Santa on steroids who has a Canada flag plastered across his t-shirt. It's wonderful and dark and bloody and beautiful, and it's a must-read in my books. It's going to be a short, 6-issue series, I think. And according to Darcy Van Poelgeest, it is his magnum opus.
That is awesome.
I am pulling up his movies, so you aren't just he says he's a movie person, but what has he done? So yeah, like I said, he's a screenwriter and director. Not a ton. He's won a lot of awards, but he's very much a Canadian. So Corvus screened at the festivals worldwide, including Toronto After Dark, Vancouver International Film Festival, and Sci-Fi London. Was nominated for 3 Golden Sheets, 9 American Maverick Movie Awards, 7 Leo Awards, and was the #1 best-selling short film in Canada on iTunes. He then had The Orchard in 2015, received a Bravo Fact Award, screened at the Atlantic Film Festival, multiple film festivals, won 5 awards at the LA Shorts, including Best Film, Best Screenplay, and Best Director. And then recently was nominated for 5 Leos. So, he's got some chops. He ain't a big fish yet.
Mm-hmm.
His first movie ever was 2019, but yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So those are our picks of the week. And, if you have any other... those are our picks of the week. I'm going to have to edit that out just because I completely got lost.
Nope, leave it in. It all stays in.
Nope. Well, this episode probably. All right. So at this point, we're going to be talking about all things streaming. And like I mentioned earlier, let's start with Netflix, really, the grandfather of streaming. They've been by far the most successful, and they for sure disrupted the whole video rental market, and they've always been a disruptor. For those of you who aren't aware, they actually started off as a online over the mail DVD rental company. They started off back in 1997. They had about under 100 employees. They had 30 employees, 925 titles, which they literally just mailed out to you. You got it in the mail, you watched it, and then you sent it back. It's funny because I heard of this company Netflix, and I heard of what they did. We didn't have this service here in Canada. But yeah, it just blew up. And they them and Blockbuster were going back and forth. There was a real battle, and then when was it? In 2000, Netflix had about 300,000 subscribers, and they were starting to hurt when it comes to profits. And Blockbuster put in a bid for $50 million. Essentially, one of the terms was that Blockbuster proposed that Netflix would have to be renamed Blockbuster.com, and they would handle the entire online, subscriptions. And Blockbuster would take care of physical DVDs in stores. And essentially, they wanted to also move away from the U.S. Postal Service, but that offer was declined. So there you go. Look at how things end up happening, right?
Yep.
In February 2007, the company delivered its billionth DVD, and that's really when they started moving away from their original core business model of DVDs and postal rentals, and they introduced a video-on-demand service via the internet. So essentially, back in 2007 is when they really put in a massive investment and began having their movie catalog over the internet for usage. Their expansion really began around 2010. That's when Netflix was introduced here in Canada. And it's always an interesting discussion because, here in Canada, we have the CRTC, which essentially, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler, but they are essentially the czar of all things media.
They have very limited oversight on the internet.
Well, it's okay, yes, outside of the internet, I should say. But they still have a lot of say as it pertains to the rights to what is allowed here in Canada.
If you're the rights holder, you want to get as much money selling it to different locations. And Netflix selling to Canada is not the same as selling to the States.
No, exactly. No, so what I was going to say was that the CRTC, essentially what they have a lot of the Canadian content rules that Netflix still has to follow, which adds to the whole, the catalog having to be different from the get-go. But then the companies themselves, they obviously, within every country/zone, they want to obviously maximize rights. So something that is sold to the U.S. might not necessarily be sold to Canada. And now we're actually seeing this expand to the point where a show that is on Netflix in the USA, there are bidding wars here in Canada between the various streaming services that we have, such as Crave, Netflix, and those are the major two players. We don't have Hulu here in Canada. We will not be getting DC streaming services. We will not be getting the Disney Plus service later this year. So, it's basically Crave and Netflix. There used to be Show Me, which was owned by Rogers, that kind of went belly up a couple of years ago. And a lot of their catalog actually ended up going to Netflix and Crave. And some of them just kind of disappeared. So I'm pretty sure Rogers still holds the streaming rights to some shows.
Yeah, probably. Who knows who holds rights for half this stuff?
And exactly, and that's why the catalogs are just so, varied. These companies essentially, as you mentioned, trying to get the best bids. So you have bidding wars everywhere, all around the world. And in the States is a little more clear cut because, in the States, what we are seeing a lot of is, TV stations launching their own streaming services. So, for example, CBS has their CBS streaming service, I guess it's called the All Access service, where they have their exclusive rights, and obviously they're going to be having anything owned by CBS or USA Network or anything like that on that streaming service. And then, from there, they'll be selling those to Canada. Perfect example of that would be Star Trek Discovery, which is a CBS exclusive, but then here in Canada, it is on Crave TV or Space Channel. So it's just money being literally thrown all around the world for rights of different TV shows. So going back to, the way that it is in the States, so, you have CBS All Access. You're now seeing, especially in sports, you're seeing ESPN Plus. You're seeing DAZN, which is making massive strides, both in U.S. and Canada, buying exclusive rights to sports leagues. And that, when it comes to cutting the cord, I think that's where a lot of people have kind of been weary on fully cutting the cord. And I know as a fact that, my circle of friends and family, they're wary of cutting the cord fully because they want to be able to watch the latest sports game live. So, that the most convenient way of doing that is still watching it on TV. But with, MLB.TV, they that might be an option. But the main issue is that because everyone under the sun is having their own streaming services, it's becoming more expensive now to cut the cord than to just have your TV, in the old school way of that you've consumed it your entire life up until the past 10 years or so.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, one of the largest issues is, for a basic package of television, I'm going to be basing this a lot on Canadian dollars. You can pay anywhere from, $60 to $100 Canadian for a basic package of television.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, if you're lucky.
Yeah, I'm talking basic, like, 30 channels max. I guess the more popular choices would be, when you have your super channels and your sports channels, you're looking at probably $120 to $150 at that point. And I would say that that's what people normally get if they're going to get a TV package here in Canada. You're looking at about $150. But then, when you're looking at the streaming side of things, Crave TV, Crave TV essentially has the rights to all of HBO, Starz, Showtime, and all of those shows. So you're paying $10 a month for, their movie library, and then you're paying an extra $10 a month for their extended library, which does include, essentially what would be known as your HBO Go, but it also includes everything that Showtime is releasing, everything that Starz is releasing. That comes out to $20. So between Crave and Netflix, you're looking anywhere from $28 to $35, increasing to $38. So right there, let's just say, $40 between two services right there. Once you start adding sports, if you're a baseball fan and a hockey fan, chances are you'll be able to survive with the Sportsnet package, which gives you everything that you kind of want there. That's $20 a month. But then if you want to watch soccer, you're going to need DAZN because that gives you your English Premiership, your Italian League, your Spanish League. That's another $20 a month. So, I guess short story long, all of these, $10 here, $20 there, they add up, and it just becomes a bit of a headache for you to manage. And because of restrictions when it comes to number of screens and account sharing and, the amount of technology around AIs that they're creating around ensuring that people aren't sharing their accounts, it just doesn't, for some folks, it just at this point does not make sense for them to, cut the cord and rely on streaming services.
I agree. Like, it's bizarre. Like, it's such a bizarro world. This is like a air quote problem we have.
Exactly. it's funny because like even 2 years ago, this was going to be the future. This was going to be the future. But now I'm seeing more, the more streaming services that are coming on board, the less people are going to want to and are actually investing in streaming services. So there was an article that I was reading in research for this episode, and it was a very interesting article because as of a few years ago, people were investing a lot in their streaming services, but over the past couple years, the overall dollars within streaming services has increased because there's obviously more, but they've seen an exponential growth in piracy. And essentially what this article was saying was, not fully blaming the number of streaming services, but they were saying that it's becoming so complicated for you to watch the shows that you want over one streaming service that people are resorting back to piracy.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look back to the origin of piracy on the internet, and it was about music, because that was what you could download, right?
Exactly.
This was the era when videos were
Yeah.
You let it download all day. Maybe you get your 20 minutes of Dragon Ball. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But you could get music because it was short enough and the files were small enough. It's what it is. But as soon as iTunes made it easier at a price point that people thought was reasonable, they just went to iTunes. That's how you win.
Yep. And it's kind of funny because like Apple has done the smart thing where they are, having the rights to rent or, whatever you want to call it, lend out for a price, seasons of TV shows or episodes of TV shows. But it's kind of, in your mind, it's your one-stop shop of actually doing this legally as opposed to, going and getting a torrent or whatever. That's one way that Apple has been very smart about this in the long run. Having said that, there's so many rumors out there that Apple will be launching a streaming service soon. So who knows where all this is going in regards to just the sheer volume, and it'll be interesting to sort of see if they do continue their model of renting out and loaning out their content for you for a set amount of time.
Yeah, it's such a thing. Like, right? Like, it's such a... It's a classic... It's a classic tragedy of the commons, right?
Yeah.
Or a classic prisoner's dilemma. If not all of you do this, like, some of you are better off. If you all do this, you're all gonna lose.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those unfortunate situations of, like, you and I can sit here and we understand the logic of why you would want exclusivity. It makes sense. The problem is as soon as everyone wants exclusivity, I can't get my shows no more.
Yep.
And if I have to pay what I had to pay for cable, much less the fact that you're looking at, like, YouTube streaming and you're getting ads.
Yeah.
And, like, you didn't know people were going to start putting ads in this shit.
Oh, 100%. 100%. The price is going to go up and we're going to get ads. And it's going to end up being what we see as TV, just condensed. I remember a couple months ago reading an article saying that Netflix has been testing out, ads before and after shows. Promoting their own stuff.
I hate them.
Yeah, I luckily haven't seen any of those yet on whatever server I connect to, but I know people that have seen them, and it's just like, isn't that the whole point of us going in this direction? We're just looking right now at from a purely content point of view. There's still the whole creator and properly being compensated. If you're a producer for a TV show and you go to a network, you know what you're worth. At the end of the day, your ratings are going to tell you what you're worth. I know that it's very different now, but at its most basic, the ratings tell you what you're worth. If you have high ratings, then more people are watching you, then hey, you can, get more money at the end of the day via advertisers, via network, via whatever, what have you. Now, with streaming services, for the most part, it's such a black box. We don't know how many people actually watched a episode of, Daredevil versus Fuller House versus what have you. So these companies are, in essence, they're getting away with quite a bit because, as a producer or creator, you're kind of just relying on your streaming company, your content provider, your partner to kind of just properly compensate you.
Oh yeah, I mean that's always that's regularly a problem in any artistic field, right? Is the back and forth of who has more power.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean I think that on one side, there's always been a little bit of a black box, right? Of those numbers we get for average viewership are so soft, especially the ancient Nielsen ratings are bonkers. Yep. It's not good data.
No, but it's the data that advertisers and producers and the people who bring in the money for TV shows, that's what they relied on.
They all agree it counts. So,
yeah,
sure.
Exactly. It's interesting now because back in 2017, Nielsen actually started tracking streaming services. They created a algorithm that would actually listen to what you're watching and then track that back to their database of a streaming service TV show. So that's how we know that, for example, only 4 million people watched the first episode of Fuller House versus 6 million people watching the first episode of Daredevil. So, and I bring those examples up because that's, I was reading this when I was doing research for this episode, and those numbers, suggest that this is the Nielsen company was able to get these via their algorithm of listening to what people are watching, which is scary as shit in its own sense. But that's how they're now somewhat being able to sell. And here's where the Nielsen company is brilliant. They were actually selling this information only to producers for the longest time. Now they're selling it to advertisers and other people. But, again, going back to the original idea that you presented, how trustworthy are these numbers? What do these numbers actually mean? Just because it's on doesn't mean I'm actually watching it. Going back to the way the Nielsen numbers worked initially, one TV doesn't mean one person is watching it. It just means that there's one household, I guess, would be watching it. We don't know the actual number of people watching it. We've never known the number of people that have recorded things, or now PVR and, the whole streaming thing is there. And, we don't accurately have metrics for
it's always been soft.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so from I guess where I'm getting at is, the classic debate of creator, in this new age, I don't feel that they don't have much of a ground to really stand on when they say, hey, I want more money, or even an actor in one of these TV shows that is probably being streamed by millions and millions and millions. It's giving less power to those involved in the process, and more power to those in the ivory towers, I guess.
I mean, I think that's the perception. I think that when you account for other factors, that might not necessarily be the case. I mean, I think you look at stuff of let's look at how the ease of which someone can move around nowadays. Let's look at Hassan Minhaj as a great example of he was on the Daily Show and was making we don't know the exact figures, but we can deduce he's making decent money, and he 100% had to step up when he went to Netflix. But if Netflix gives him a raw deal, I can almost guarantee he could turn around and sell functionally the exact same show that we have changed just enough to have it done somewhere else and be just successful.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The exact same thing happened when Cracked imploded, and a bunch of people from Cracked are basically doing the exact same shows they used to do.
Yes.
They're just different enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see how long that, these creators will be able to get away with that, and the power to them. The 100% the power to them. But that there's people doing a lot of research right now in law libraries as we speak, figuring out a way that these creators won't be able to just change it enough. The definition of enough is going to have to expand.
I don't think it will, because
I don't think
they try to do that. No, because as soon as they try to do that, Stephen Colbert gets involved as an intervener, and then there's money on both sides. And when there's money on both sides, we can kind of get a better idea of how this is going to end up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. But we'll see where all this goes. It's interesting, like, just seeing, from a creator standpoint, it would be interesting to sort of talk to some more creators and sort of see how they feel about all of this. Actors in these TV shows that are on these streaming services. And I wonder, a good example of this would be a show like a Riverdale, where they are aired as traditional TV in the United States, but they are streaming service exclusives, all around the world.
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? Like, I mean, like, how much do the creators even know? Like, if I'm a writer, if I'm a writer, which I am, but if I had an agent, regularly you have a secondary agent for international markets, which in North America, usually Canada and the United States are actually considered kind of one market for whatever reason.
Right.
And they just have another way, and the secondary markets are always treated as gravy. And I think it's because of the internal logic of, like, you're not expecting that money. Mm-hmm. It's the same way that when you look at box office numbers, we only really care about domestic, which is the United States. Even if international's higher, like, we've seen movies that had great international openings be called failures because the domestic wasn't good enough.
Exactly. Yep.
So yeah.
That you bring up an interesting point there. But if I was a creator, I would take everything into consideration. And hey, if you want me to keep working for you, then then pay up.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, like, who even has, like, who's even in charge of those rights? Like, it's probably someone in the production company, and their job is, I'm gonna go and my job is to get you as much money as I can, which they're probably not doing.
No, probably not.
But just because statistics and, like, they have to handle everyone. But I mean, honestly, like, if you're a creator, I think you got bigger problems than to worry about 1 or 2 points more in Canada. I don't know.
No, that's right. I'm sure that creators have sort of their domestic goals that they obviously care about, and I'm sure that there's they have goals internationally, but it's kind of set as is, lower, but still manageable, and then everything else, as you said, is just groovy. I know that some American sports, that's sort of the way that they see Canada. It's, they look at the power of the domestic. So the way that the NFL works, especially with TV rates, is they care about the domestic numbers, and anything that Canada gives them is just good enough. Like, it's just, it's extra exposure. They're getting money, but it's like, it's not their, it's not their bread and butter. It will never be their bread and butter. And for lack, who knows if they actually care too much. So I'm sure creators are like that to a certain extent, but it's if you're penny pinching, and if you're a creator that wants to ensure that they're getting paid and being recognized for their work, I'm sure that they'd like to know the exact numbers somehow.
Fair.
But I'm sure that, they also like to have a job. So, they can only demand so much. So
Yeah.
So that's from a creator point of view. In terms of, where all of this is going, it's obviously booming. As we mentioned before, Disney is coming out with their own streaming service now that they've acquired Fox. Who knows what Disney Plus and Hulu have in store with all of the Netflix cancellations. Who knows where the rights lay right now, and who knows where the rights are going to be going. So, where do you see all of this going down the road? Like, it's now knowing that exclusivity and rights is king. Where do you see this whole streaming world going?
Well, I think that we're talking about most likely, because it's still entirely possible that people will be clever, and Disney and Netflix will get their shit together and realize that we can make a lot more money working together instead of this bullshit we're doing.
Yep.
Fucking, it just behooves all of them. But I think that sometimes control and power are more important than money and creative expression. I think that likely we've kind of already touched on it, that it's going to be increasingly balkanized, that you're going to end up with all these different sub-services, and they're all going to lose out, right? Because I'm going to choose which ones I can/will access. And I think it's already becoming a problem in the States.
Yep.
They use it in Canada. We really have two options.
Yep.
And it's not that bad to get both.
No. And it's funny because that's sort of where I was going with all of this. That this is sort of going to be my ultimate, I guess, for lack of a better term, my thesis in all of this is that I think that in the States, they're kind of shit out of luck, for lack of a better term. They're going to have to live with, 1,001 streaming services, but just the way that rights and exclusivity works here in Canada, we kind of lucked out because you do have a choice between either Netflix or Crave, and managing the subscription for both of them isn't too bad. And if taking a look at, because ESPN has their own streaming service, and every sports league in the States is having their own streaming service. What they're actually doing is that they're selling the rights to bulk sports to, for example, DAZN. So DAZN here in Canada has the rights to a lot more than they do in the States. They have not only the NFL, but next year they're going to have the English Premier League. They're going to be showing a bunch of various sports, and including MLS. MLS right now you can only watch on ESPN, but here in Canada you'll be able to watch it among your DAZN subscription. So again, we've lucked out in that sense, and I can see us continue to luck out, because there's anything that TSN, which is owned by Bell Media, and Sportsnet, which is owned by Rogers, that they don't have, I can see going to DAZN. So really, from a sports perspective, you have three obvious choices in front of you. From a TV movie point of view, you really have two choices in front of you. So, while it does add up, and you're if you're not penny pinching, then, you can technically get all of them. But, at the end of the day, you're going to choose the ones that you like the most, and it's a lot more manageable here in Canada. So, I think that if you're outside of the U.S., you're going to be winning.
Well, yeah, and I think it's just one of those, well, not necessarily, right? Because Britain's also getting brutal.
Yes.
I think that specifically Canada just continues to exist as the fact of, there being 30 million of us. There being fewer of us than there are Californians.
Yes.
Again, works to our advantage. And it doesn't always. We get really hosed sometimes, but every once in a while something this happens where just no one cares about the rights that much, because there's money, but there's not as much, right? It's more worthwhile for them to fight for the West Coast, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, do you see, because of the sheer number of streaming services that could exist, do you think this trend of cable cutting, cord cutting will continue?
In general, yeah. I think it's gonna, solely because, like, I don't think, like, TV's still not offering me anything better. I watched TV not that long ago, and, like, the ads are getting worse.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, it's just not good.
So you think you think that the cord cutting will continue despite just the streaming and as overall?
Yeah.
To their own detriment, TV somehow has managed to completely, screw up. Yeah, I can see that. I can totally see that. And, again, not keep on bringing this up, but it will be sort of interesting to sort of see, with more media giants eating up rights and buying exclusive contracts to companies and streaming rights and this and that, it will be interesting to sort of see where we end up in the future. But, like, what I can actually see happening down the road is a lot of these smaller streaming services, for lack of a better term, smaller, sort of like a CBS All Access or an ESPN Plus or what have you, they'll eventually, might notice, hey, we can't continue our own streaming service, so they'll sell the rights to someone, and we'll see.
Or it'll be weirder, right? Like, it'll be CBS still exists, but if you get Netflix, you'll also get CBS, and just all of our stuff is on their thing.
Yeah.
And just we get the metrics that Netflix does? Question mark? I don't know.
Now, do you think that TV companies would ever heavily invest in a type of service where everything is over the air?
Are you asking if they would reinvent television?
Well, you know how these companies are so hell-bent on doing so. But, if I had the choice, and I know that you kind of partially do to a certain extent, there are services that offer this, where you can get your TV completely over the net.
Sure.
But do you see that as a option moving forward?
I don't even know.
See, the issue going back, to what we had talked about, about an hour ago, when we were talking about the gaming conundrum, was the whole internet and the way that people are charged with internet. Because realistically, if you are streaming a lot, you're probably going to eat up a lot of your internet. So unless you have unlimited, you're kind of pooched to a certain extent. Especially if you have more than one person constantly streaming. At my parents' place, when I go over, up to 3-4 people could be streaming at a time. So.
Yeah, I just think that the problem with over the air is that it's right. Like for some reason the government decided not to really regulate the internet. Like, it just hasn't. Versus, like, they own the airwaves still. So, if you go on the air, like, you've used the airwaves, you have to meet a bunch of really weird, wonky rules.
Yep.
So, like, in Canada, as soon as you go over the air, the CRTC has so much more power over you.
Mm-hmm.
And in the States, it's the same thing. Like, part of the deal in the United States of having these different frequencies over the airwaves is they have to do a certain amount of news coverage. That's why Fox has news coverage.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep. So there you go. Streaming services. It's a hell of a thing. Convenient. We don't know yet. I think the jury's still out there to say if it's more convenient, and to sort of see how much clearly the way that we consume content is changing, but it'll be interesting to see where this takes us right now. I just feel like right now we're kind of in the Wild West, where everyone is trying everything and so many options, and really it'll be interesting to see where all of this goes. If 5 years down the line, it'll be very cool to have sort of listen to this episode, and sort of see, how far off we were with our thoughts.
Yeah, we'll see.
But yeah, that's where we're at. So that's streaming services in a nutshell. Have anything else to chat about?
I don't think so. I think that honestly, this is just, it is what it is, right? It's not great.
No.
This is where we are.
Exactly. It's like I said, it's the Wild West. Right now we are in a revolution, the Wild West. Everything's up for grabs, and we'll see where this takes us. And yeah, without repeating myself like a 20th time, I think that is a perfect place to sort of leave things. So before we, end the episode, please visit our website at www.itscanonpodcast.com. You can find all of the social medias there. We have buttons for everything. RSS feed. You can sign up on your favorite podcast app, whether it be iTunes, Spotify, third-party app, whatever you use. You can sign up and you can follow us and subscribe. We do have a Patreon. Check our Patreon. And again, send us feedback on what you think, what you want, where you want us to go with the Patreon, because as I mentioned last week, this show is for you. If you have suggestions on what we should talk about, let us know so that, we can talk about that. Or else you're going to keep listening to us talk about things that interest us and might not interest anyone else, and that would be a very, very bad thing. You can obviously find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at It's Canon Podcast, on all three platforms. Then you can find both Tyler and I on our personal accounts. You can find Tyler at Tyler_ROI, TYLER_ROI, and you can find me at BR_AGUILAR. So there we go, and we'll be back with a new episode in the next few days, and take care. Thanks for listening. Subscribe and send us feedback. Goodbye.
Night, everybody.